Welcome guys to this new video on using sandboxes with agents. So let me walk you through an example. I'm in the sandboxes model Langchain. We'll be using model for sandboxes and then Langchain for creating an agent. So I'm in this current directory. Let us set with the environment. So I'm going to use Python 3.14. Right. So if you see here, oh, I think it's created an environment, so let me just delete it and create a project from it. All right, so I'm in this. Let me do user element Python 3.4. Okay, so it's initialize the project, and then for this we'll be using Langchain with OpenAI. We'll use Deepagents. So let me add that, and then we'll use Langchain with OpenAI. So Langchain with OpenAI, and then I also need model SDK. Model is a managed service for which provides sandboxes. We'll use that, and then uh, what else do we need? FD pages, Langchain, Python.env for environment variable. Okay, cool. And then once we have these, we also have the virtual environment. Now, let me. So for setting up model, all you have to do is basically go to model, right? And then just sign up. So I already have a, you get a free credit and you can use that. Once you have module ready, if you see here, I already have a sandbox running called Deepagents. But if you go to module, you'll have apps. If you go here, I've got a Deepagents app. Within that, I've got sandboxes. So you'll use that. Okay. All you have to do is just sign up and you'll get a free account and you can use that. There are other sandbox services like Run Loop and few more, but you can use whatever. Here in this example, I'll be using Sand model. Now, once I have a model account, to set it up, all you have to do is mm, you'll have to do Python uh, minus. Okay, so let me activate my environment. All you'll have to do is do Python minus m model setup. This is going to get the API key for your model account, and you'll be asked to sign in. A browser will open up, and then I've already done it, so I'm not going to do it. Okay. Now let's get back to one of our examples. So I have a basic example here in my yeah. So I have basic example in my main.py file. Let's look at what we are doing here. So I think I would need the Langchain model also. So let me install that. We add Langchain. With this, cool. So yeah, this now dependency is resolved. Looks nice to me. Open AI, why do I put this? Just- Okay, now cool. So I've installed Langchain model, and let's go through that example that we have here. I'm importing modal here, and then from deep agents, I have a create deep agent. And you also need to have OpenAI API key, so that you have to select here. Okay, and once you have that, you'll be good to go. All right, now coming back to this, I'm importing the deep agent from deep agents from Langchain OpenAI. I've got chat OpenAI, and then from Langchain model, I've got model sandbox. .env for loading the environment. So I'm first here loading the environment variable, in this case OpenAI API key. Now here I'm initializing a model app, so you can this is how you do it. What it's going to do is you take this model app and look up, and it's going to create a model app called Deepagents. As you saw, I already have that created in my thing called Deepagents, right? So yeah, that is it's going to create that for you. And if it's not there, then if it's already created, then it's just going to bring that app back. And if you set this to true, it's going to create a new one for you. So if you create a model app and then you create a sandbox from it, so you give that app in model sandbox app, so you get a model sandbox. Now this becomes our main, and then you put that as part of the backend. So in Langchain, you have something called a model sandbox. You initialize this way backend using that, and which will be used in a deep agents. Now, create deep agent is a way to create deep agents. It's from the deep agents library. It's pretty nice. I use deep agents in most of my work, so that's what I'm going to use there. So you create an agent called deep agent. Give it the model. I'm using 5.5 here. The system prompt is you are a Python coding assistant with Sandbox exercise, just that. Now, any coding task you give it, it's going to use the Sandbox access. And in the backend, you give the Sandbox backend that you define here, right? So this is all you do. Now I've got an agent. I'm just calling that, invoking that agent with my message. So I'm calling it role user, and this is the message. So create a small Python script and run it and return the result. So basically, I'm calling this agent with this message. It's gonna create a small Python script, run it, and return the result. And all of this execution will happen on this backend, which is defined here. It's a sandbox basically, right? So nothing is gonna run on your machine, and that's why it's so nice. Right now, this is gonna call using API. Model is gonna hit the sandbox, run the code, and get the output in this result. And this is what I'm printing here, and then I'm shutting down I'm just terminating the sandbox because if you keep it running, you're charged for it, right? And this is my main function which I'm calling here. So let's try to run this and see how this goes. You will run. Let's do it's basically it's gonna take a little time because it spins up a sandbox on the fly, and then all right, so yeah, you can see it here. So yeah, it did the sum of squares from 1 to 5, which is it wrote a script for it and ran that code, and then you get the printing shutdown message. So this is a basic example of how you use Sandbox. Now let's look at a more complicated example. Okay, so I have that here. In this example, again, we are going to use agents, but this is a more advanced use case. So what we're trying to do here is if you look at the README file, right, the advanced application is this. Uh, the advanced example models a common enterprise workflow. A business team receives an untested vendor export and wants an AI agent to inspect the data. So you have some sort of a CSV file or something that comes in, and your agent should look at that file and run some code and just find out whether that there's some issue with the code, right? So you inspect the data, you write analysis code, run it, and produce the report. This is the use case. And our use flow is going to be like this, okay? So basically, again, we create a model sandbox, and what you can do is you can also specify the CPU memory timeout, idle timeout, and then also allow network access or not, right? So that you can block here. And then we are going to seed the sandbox with some dummy data. In this case, in the root directory, workspace, and one vendor audit. So we're going to create this root directory in the sandbox and then going to put some files there, right? So yeah. Then it gives deep agents a model sandbox backend so the agent can use file system tools and then yeah, and then it exposes a small host site to get contract policy. So, lookup can stay outside the sandbox. Basically, so yeah, I mean, this is what we are going to do, right? So let's look at some code. So the idea is agent reads the sandbox input files, right? Code and everything happens within the sandbox, not on your host machine, right? Now let us look at the code. Right, so here I've got some imports. These are Python basic standard library imports, and then I've again importing model, create deep agent from deep agents, and then in deep agents you've got something called in backends you've got file download response, file upload response. I'm using this because we are going to upload files and download files from a sandbox. .env from again model sandbox chat OpenAI. And then from the model library, we've got all of these. And sandbox file system directory not found. These are some exceptions that we need to handle. Okay. Now within my sandbox code, I'm defining an app, right? It's called Deepagents. There is a remote root, as I told you. This is going to be our remote work directory where everything the agents is going to run within this directory, not outside it. And then there's input directory, and then an output directory, and then there's source directory. So we've got all of that set up. Inputs is where we're going to place our files. Output is the agent after agent runs, and then source directory is where it's going to write the source code. Okay, and then this is our local directory. I'm just defining it here called artifacts, where uh, whatever agent runs, we're going to download the files from the sandbox. That is here. And then this is a new way of handling so Langchain provides model sandbox. We are overwriting that. We are inheriting basically from this class and overwriting some methods. Right. So read file used to use an earlier method, but we're just overwriting that so that we can handle all of these errors. Right. So if you see here, if the part does not start with this, then we say okay, it's a because it has the path has to start with this, right? That's because we want a full path. So if the path doesn't start, then we throw an exception, right? Or we say that invalid path, right? Or return file load. Otherwise, we download the file, and if there are these exceptions, then we handle them. Similarly, with write file, if there is no proper path, then we say an invalid path. Otherwise, we do this. All right, so we have this modern model sandbox class, I mean, which is inheriting, and then we have a contract policy. Now, this is just a dummy contract policy, but you could have your own. So your agent is going to test against this policy and then check whether these terms match, right? Now, this is going to be our tool. It's a simple function that just returns this, right? A JSON version of contract policy. And then we have some input file. This function returns input. These are the files that are going to be written in our think of it like dummy data. So I'm defining a vendor sales.csv, and this is going to be data. Then the contract rules is going to be the contract rules we define on top, right? The contract policy, this one. So this is just the dummy data that will be used for feeding the data into the sandbox. And then we have a README file, which talks about what we're doing. So here in this again, we are creating a sandbox. This function just creates a sandbox using app name. If there is no app name, it's going to create. Otherwise, just return the already created app. And then from that app, we create a sandbox. Here you can see you can define some tags, and these tags will help you look up the if you're doing some sort of tracing or things like that will help logging. And then you have timeout, idle timeout, CPU, how much this is like in MB. So this is like 1 GB of memory, and then you are blocking the. So now Sandbox does not have any access to the internet. You can block the network. From there on, then you are seeding. This is how before the sandbox starts, you are writing stuff into the sandbox. So this data gets written into the sandbox so that the agent can have access to it, right? So I take the sandbox, I call the file system, and then make directory, and then you create all these directories, and then you write the files into this. So I'm calling this function which returns this dictionary and then doing items on it and then writing the content. So it writes all of this into the sandbox files. Here there is a build agent function where the like the main logic sits there of creating an agent. Here I get the model name, uh, right? By default it's 5.5. Again, I create a Jeep agent with the model, and then I have a tool called get contract policy, which is just like a simple function here. Then there's a sub agent. Right now, it's interesting with deep agent you can do all of this fancy stuff with very few lines of code. You can define as many sub agents. Here is a list, but I just have one sub agent. It's called artifact viewer, and then with this description and the system prompt, right? And then here you have the sub agents. You have the system prompt. We get that going, and then the backend is this backend that we have your the sandbox backend, right? Similar to what we did last time. But if you look at the sub agents, we have asked it to do review generated data, audit artifacts for completeness, reproducibility, and evidence quality. And the system prompt is you are a QA reviewer for sandbox data. So basically, the sub agent is going to look at the what the main agent has produced and review it and then give the output, right? So think of it like the final testing or QA reviewer. It says you are a QA reviewer for Sandbox, data audit artifacts, inspect files in the output directory, and verify that the report is reproducible, size config. So it's basically going to look at your output. And then you define a system prompt saying that your what is the root, sandbox root, there, what's the input, right? And the different constraints, required work to be done, and the output that is to be produced. So I'm saying, okay, produce a result.json, excuse me, and then audit summary, remediation, and redacted sample. Okay, these are the output that the agent is going to produce. And then I'm also saying use the artifact review subagent once to review the produce file. So it's going to automatically call the subagent. All right, and then the backend is the module backend. Here, once the work is done, we have all those files stored in the sandbox. This is how you download the files from there, right? So I have a local artifact direct variable that I created here, right, which is basically going to point to this artifact directly when they order. And then within that, I'm going to be downloading everything from the sandbox onto my host system, right, or the server on my laptop basically. So these are the remote paths output directory. These are the output files, and I go through each this thing remote path, and then if the content is done, then I continue. Otherwise, I just write it here, right, and then return the downloaded path. So yeah, this is the download artifacts, and then now in the main I'm going to run it. So I'm basically loading environment variable here. Um, and then sandbox is like creating a sandbox and then passing that sandbox to the modern middle sandbox, then feeding the sandbox with the input files. Here I'm just testing it. So you can also call backend.execute with any shell command is going to run. So here I'm just saying in the remote root what are the different types of files that are present. So just running that and seeing the output. So I'm just going to print that here. Then I'm building the agent. Once I have the agent here, this is how I run the agent. I say run the vendor data quality audit end to end, create the required artifacts, review them, and summarize only the most important, right? And then there is this, you can pass this as a conflict recursion limit, like saying that, if it goes on for too long, you can stop it. Sub agents or, any of those agents. Now, once its agent is done, I'm printing the output here. Also downloading the artifacts here, right? And printing the artifacts here and printing all the files here, right? And then at the end of it, I'm terminating the time, right? So this is the whole flow. Um, so yeah, let's run it and see. Hmm, Okay, what we can do is let me just I've already this. Let me clear this right so that I can show you. So now, right now, my this is empty, and this is where it's going to download all the files from the sandbox. Okay. As you can see, I've got like here the app name is in the so you can see right, it's seeded the sandbox files and seeded in this directory workspace vendor order. Uh, Inputs, there are two inputs file or three input files, readme and then contract and then and then we'll have outputs there also. And then again, as you can see here in the create sandbox, my app name is called Deepagents. Right, so this is Deepagents. And if I go to my model sandbox, you can see I have one app and it's called Deepagents, and then I have one sandbox line. You'll see this if I click on this, you can see CPU usage, and right now this is running at its current time. So you've got sandboxes, what time it is created, right? So this is you can see it from you can terminate it from here. And this is CPU and memory and times to start. All right, now yeah, it's still running, so let's wait. Um, you can integrate sand like as I said, you can integrate sand. You can use different. There are other companies that provide sandboxes like Runloop and then some Daytona as well, right? Langsmith also has got its own sandbox implementation. And then, yeah, so this is like your proper, I mean, you can also create a coding agent from it, right? So in a simple example, you just like this sort of can create a coding agent. But yeah, this is like a very basic one. But if you want, you can add more sub agents and more tools to it, okay? Yeah, you're waiting for the output. I'm using GPT 5.5, which is like a thinking model, I think. That's why it's taking too much. Oh, it hit the recursion limit for some reason. Let me see. Let's see if this fixes the issue. Should be pretty straightforward. All right, so we've got the output. You can see, right? So this is the seeded files, and then the agents produce a summary. It said, okay, audio completed end-to-end artifacts created. We've got these artifacts created or the sort of output, and then this is the most important finding, right? Reviewed 7 sales rows, blah blah blah. So this was dummy data, but this is how things would work. And then I've downloaded these results on the machine, right? So you can see those here in the artifacts vendor audit. So this was initially in Sandbox, and then we downloaded it. This is an example of an advanced sandbox use case. Basically, you create a sandbox, you give it as a backend to your agent, and then it takes, it does everything else from there. All right, thank you. I'll be posting more videos on Langchain, Deepagents, and I hope you guys had fun. Thank you.